Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. And I do want to remind you, today's show brought to you in part by CAOOY.org and BrilliantEnergy.com. But you know what? We still have a lot more to cover, and I'm going to get straight to it with our next guest. You know, one of the things I've noticed, it's not only a problem in the workplace, but it's a problem everywhere, which is the lack of critical thinking. We've got a whole culture that simply doesn't seem to know how to think intuitively. We have a culture that doesn't know how to think in a way that really simply makes sense. You know, the warning signs I seen looks like they were all written by Captain Obvious. You know, a flimsy, almost like cardboard-looking stand there, you know, at a store. Anyone above 5 pounds should not sit on this. You know, why do you have signs like that? And it just blows my mind. And the reason why is I don't think people know how to think. And we've got a person here that I'm afraid that's probably going to confirm that. Kristin Arnold, how are you today? Not by how your ability to think demonstrates itself, but by your observations. Thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin.
I set you up for
I don't know how to react to that intro.
Yes. It was really good up until about 30 seconds ago. But
yeah,
you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I do think that there's the Captain Obvious moments, but I think there's the less obvious ones. You know, have you ever had made a decision and then in hindsight you go, oh my God, what was I thinking if I had only known then what I know now? And those are the ones that you really want to kick yourself. I mean, the obvious ones, you go, duh, you know, what a dolt.
Right.
But, you know, it's the more
There's a lot of those, though.
There's
a lot of those, though, Kristin. I'm shocked what our, you know, common level of shared understanding has lowered itself to.
Yeah, that's a whole comment on society, which I don't think we have time in your radio show for.
Yeah, you're probably right. Let's talk about what you specifically do. How do you raise the quality of the game? And I like what you say at your website, which is extraordinaryteam.com. It does begin with a conversation, not with lectures and not with speeches. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, thank you. I think whenever you're facing a decision, and let's face it, as business owners, we're always facing decisions. We're making decisions right and left all the time. And when you're looking at a decision, oftentimes we only focus on the things that we know, and we don't focus on the things that we don't know. And that's called fixated thinking. There's a great story of a guy who lost his keys in a dark parking lot, and he's searching for his keys, and a buddy comes up and says, so, you know, I'll help you find your keys. Where's the last place you saw them? And he said, over there. And he goes, well, why are you looking over there? Why are you looking here? And he said, because here's where the light is.
Oh, boy. That's what I'm talking about.
I mean, a lot of times we just look at our own frame of reference, and we don't think beyond what we currently know. We don't stop and go, are there other alternatives? Are there other possibilities? Is this really even the problem that we're trying to solve or the opportunity that we're trying to leverage? Am I framing it the right way? Am I asking the right question to begin with? And then am I looking at other possible solutions?
Mm-hmm. What is your background that you brought into the experience that you're involved in today?
Well, you know, I used to be in the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard was doing something that they called TQM. You remember that? Total Quality Management?
Yes. Back in the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, I've been in business for over 20 years, and they were just moving into teamwork. And think about teamwork in a military environment. You know, there's top-down hierarchy, military, but then there's also really rich opportunities to work together as a team. So they read the job description and they said, Kristin, that's what you do pretty naturally. So why don't you train our people on how to be facilitators? So I did that for several years, and then people started asking me to do it on the outside. And what really got me interested in critical thinking is that as groups come together, they're always making decisions on how they're going to do the work. Teams don't actually do real work. The real work gets done outside the team environment, done by onesies and maybe twosies. So it's really about how are you coming together and sharing information and making those hard decisions or easy decisions, and are you really thinking them through?
Wow, that's an interesting thought, because we're now, academically, everything has changed to be entirely team-oriented, which makes me wonder how can people even think autonomously when you have that kind of environment educational-wise?
Well, just because our environment, we're teaching our kids, and I have 2 kids who are now in their mid-20s, even though they were brought up teams, doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to do good teams. They know how to work together, but they also know how to not work together. They also have some bad habits, and if they've never been on a good team, it's hard to replicate that. So as employers, we need to be smarter about not assuming that the millennials are coming into the workplace being good team members. They do know how to play team, but they're playing at it. They're not being good team members.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And what I was saying is that it seems like one would have to be very competent and confident on an autonomous level in order to be a good team player. And what I've noticed in education today is a shift from any emphasis almost on autonomy. Almost everything is done in a groupthink sort of manner.
Yeah, and you have to have a certain degree of self-awareness to be a good team member. And so, not everything in the workplace is done in a team environment. A lot of stuff is done. The actual work gets done by individuals. A lot of decisions get made collaboratively, and some decisions get here's a shot, gets made by the boss, and you need to follow them.
Yeah.
And so there isn't just one modality about how groups make decisions.
Well, good luck explaining that to a millennial. All right, I appreciate that. Very good information. And again, I noticed you cover a lot of different topics, or rather a lot of different media with this topic. What would you say is the most compelling message, that are the most interesting aspect and most practical aspect as far as the message that you share for business owners out there?
I would just say dig a little deeper. And a good example for this is Google thinking. I just did something. I searched on the internet and thought that an animal shelter had closed because the headline was, "This shelter is closing its doors." And I went, "Oh, it's closed its doors." I didn't read the paragraph below that said they're moving to a new location, newly to be determined. And sometimes we're just taking the top line. We're not spending the time to dig a little deeper and really validate our assumptions and our possible ideas.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. The best website for people to learn more about you?
It is www.extraordinaryteam.com.
Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks so much.
Do you want to remind the listener, best content here shows up over there at usdatareview.com, including this interview. More for you after this on The Price of Business.